Well, yeah, I wasn't going to read it directly.
But you might want to read.
But I can. Okay. Did I say 532? Yeah, my dyslexia did kick in there.
Dyslexia.
Yeah. Sorry. I wasn't going to read it exactly like it. I was going to make up my own
That's great.
number.
So when people advance it, I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about.
I don't know. I meant frame 532.
It's the credits.
Thanks for catching that. Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about frame 350. I don't know why I couldn't say it. Welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar.
A place where pop culture creatives
discover design icons that make us tick.
And we share a few cocktails in the process.
Yep.
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Today we share the stories of two iconic images that have had gallons upon gallons of ink spilled about them since their debut, becoming indelibly woven into the fabric of our pop culture.
So dig up your old Viewmaster, mix yourself a couple of amazing Sazeracs, and picture yourself strolling in to meet us back around the bar.
So Elliot, I know we're talking about iconic images today, and I've got one which everybody has seen, I'm 100% sure, and I'm sure you have one that we have all been very familiar with. But let me start with a question which will give away mine right away. What percentage of Americans do you think believe in Bigfoot?
Oh, so you're showing us the Loch Ness Monster picture.
Yeah, of course. According to a poll done in 2014, what do you think is the higher percentage of Americans? People that believe the universe was created by the Big Bang, or people that believe in Bigfoot?
What I think the answer is, or what I hope the answer is?
Well, what do you think?
I have a feeling more people. You said in the United States.
Yeah, in the United States.
Gosh, I would say of the two, more people probably believe in Bigfoot.
Well, I would tell you it's exactly the same number.
Really?
Yeah, the same number of people, a little over 20%, about 22% of Americans believe that Bigfoot exists and that they don't believe that the universe was created by the Big Bang. So you know what I say? Hashtag yay science.
So what about how many people believe Bigfoot created the universe?
They didn't ask that question, but there certainly has to be some evidence of that. But you know Bigfoot, right? You've seen pictures of Bigfoot, right? You've seen statues of Bigfoot. You've seen mugs, T-shirts, hipster wear. There's a musical festival called Sasquatch Festival. Bigfoot's pretty hip and cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've spent some time in the Pacific Northwest. I've brought back some Bigfoot souvenirs.
All right, so I want to talk about frame 352, taken from the 59 seconds of footage shot by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. It was shot on October 20th, 1967 in Northern California. Do you know the image I'm talking about? The one where Bigfoot's kind of strolling? It's a grainy image.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a dry creek bed, fallen trees, rocks, autumn foliage in the background, this dark brown, hairy figure with breasts walking away from the viewer. Turns to look back in mid-stride, left arm and right leg forward, right arm and left leg behind. Just sashaying along the dry creek bed. And that was captured, and that created quite the stir. Bigfoot had finally been seen and captured on footage. So, what do you think? You think it's real, Elliot, or you think it's a hoax?
I think it's oddly convenient that these guys were in the middle of nowhere, just happened to be with the movie camera in the 60s. Like today with a cell phone, maybe, but 50 years ago, 55 years ago, Yeah, that seems like a little bit of a stretch.
Well, there was a reason for that, and I'll get into it. But let me give you a little bit of history, first of all, just real briefly. Because the legend of a hairy forest beast goes way back to this place called the Painted Rock Shelter on the Tule River Reservation, which is in the Sierra Nevada mountains, central part of California. Inside this rock shelter, there's painted pictograms, and it represents things like coyotes, beaver, bear, centipedes, caterpillars, humans, eagles, and a hairy man family. Now, you're asking, what is a hairy man family, Todd, right? I thought I heard you ask that.
I was thinking, I'm taking notes as we're talking because...
Okay, so you're catching up with hairy...
Actually, I'm doing doodles of the hairy man family in the margins of my notes. Okay.
Okay, good. Good. So it's a family. It's big hairy man. It's a hairy man woman and a hairy man baby. And experts say these pictograms date back 500 to 1,000 years. So it's not just the drawings of hairy man for this Native American tribe, but it's also the legends of hairy man that are a really important part of Tule River culture.
So, question for you here.
Yes.
Do they think the Hendersons are the ones that drew the...
No.
Oh, okay.
No. The Hendersons were not around 1,000 years ago. But because I didn't know this till I was reading this research paper that I stumbled upon through my rabbit hole, and it said that most states, including California, keep a database of all recorded sites. So based on the databases of geographic sites where this activity appears, there is no other known Bigfoot pictographs or petroglyphs anywhere in California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, or Idaho. So there was drawings of Bigfoot on a rock shelter done 1,000 years ago, except he wasn't called Bigfoot. He was called Hairy Man.
Now, who called him, who discovered these drawings first?
I don't know, because they go so far back. It's just they've been known to be there for a long, long time.
Okay, so just they were like a local landmark. Someone said, "Oh yeah, do you want to go see the Hairy Man family or whatever?"
Yeah, Hairy Man was a legend with the Tule River culture, so much that Hairy Man was kind of like the boogeyman, where parents would tell their children to not stay out after dark because that's when Hairy Man comes out, and to make sure you're home on time and don't wander too far away, like that kind of stuff. But that's not the picture I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the Bigfoot photo that we all know that was taken 500 miles north of Painted Rock and the Tule River legend. So how did those filmmakers, Patterson and Gimlin, happen upon her at Bluff Creek in Humboldt County, which is right up at the Oregon-California border?
Yeah, known for its weed, right?
I have no idea about that.
I'm sure you don't.
But if you say so, I believe you. That may have something to do with the number of Bigfoot sightings or wooded man sightings up in that area. Because in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, there's a lot more interest in the legend. And of course, more sightings. Can you guess? Do you have any idea why, Elliot?
Photography, I would imagine.
That might be part of it. I didn't think about that. But you know what I thought about? What was happening in the late 1800s in California?
Minor 49ers, yes.
Right.
And westward expansion,
right.
Yes.
More people. Yeah, more people were expanding west into these wooded areas that no one had seen before.
Yeah, manifest destiny. Go west, young man.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know you knew all the Village People songs.
I do.
But that's good on you. We'll talk about that some other time. So anyway, yeah. So loggers, miners, they started interacting with the Native Americans from that area, and they heard these legends, and there was a lot more interest. Obviously, with a lot more interest, there's a lot more sightings because there's more activity. But there's really no physical evidence of what we know now as Bigfoot. Not until 1958. And what happened then was there was a logging company and a bulldozer operator discovered these large human-like footprints sunk deep in the mud around Six Rivers National Forest, which is Humboldt County, where I mentioned that previous photo was taken. And these footprints, they were like 16 inches long. So clearly Shaquille O'Neal was out there like somewhere in the forest in the 1950s. Right, that's right. And anyway, so word started getting around the logging camps, and these crews started spreading stories of other weird happenings that they had seen or heard or found, and other weird footprint sightings. And it was actually here in 1958 that the name Bigfoot was first used to describe this forest creature. And of course, with the evidence, because they made plaster casts of the footprints, and it was started to be on the news, more sightings started happening, right?
Well, okay. Did they ever figure out where these initial, was this some sort of, were people mad that they were bulldozing in this forest, and so they created a prank with these feet to try to scare people away, or that it was some sort of ecological thing, like there's this creature here, so don't do the forest clearing? Did they ever find out what the source of these footprints was?
Yes, they did, and I'm going to make you wait for that one.
Oh man,
because that becomes a real key part of the Bigfoot story. So, but yes is the answer.
So it was Shaquille O'Neal.
It was Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, sorry. All right, podcast over. Now you tell me yours. All right, so
time to get a Papa John's pizza, everybody.
I know. Okay, yeah. So, 1958, they have evidence of large footprints in that area. It becomes the hotbed of Bigfoot sightings. Bigfoot now has a name, and now with that evidence, it created a lot more interest. So, flash forward to early Friday afternoon, October 20th, 1967. Patterson and Gimlin, they set out on horseback to Bluff Creek in Humboldt County.
Okay, so in the very place where this other activity had been.
Yes,
okay.
They'd heard a lot about activity up there. So what happens, they could drive some, but they also brought horses with them to, because it's pretty rugged terrain. Mm-hmm. What happens is they're on horseback, they're following this creek north. They encounter this log jam that was left over from a previous flood on the creek. And so when they get around this log jam, they spot this creature about 25 feet away. So the horses are rearing up. They're freaking out because the horses spot the creature as well.
Right.
And so Roger Patterson is like, whoa! He's like trying to get out of his saddle, trying to calm the horse down, trying to get his camera to capture this. And while he's doing that, Bigfoot starts walking away, and Patterson chases her down. He trips, he falls. This is all on the footage if you get a chance to see the whole footage, and we'll post that. He falls down, he gets back up, he's running towards the Bigfoot. He finally captures the iconic image of what now we know as Patty the Bigfoot. He named her Patty.
Okay.
As she's looking back at them, right? And she's kind of looking back a little bit in contempt,
Yeah, like I was minding my own business and you guys came into my space.
WTF. Yeah, I was here and I was taking a bath and WTF, get out. And so that iconic image was captured. The whole thing lasted about 2 minutes. And, here we are talking about it way more than 50 years later.
Yeah, it's kind of the Zapruder film of Bigfoot.
It is exactly that. Now, there's a little more to the story, as you would guess, because that just gets us to when the footage was captured.
Right.
But I realize that I don't know what image you're going to be talking about, and I want to hear a little bit more.
Okay. So I would suggest of our two images, you maybe went a little bit lowbrow with your Bigfoots. I apologize to any Bigfoot hunters and I don't know.
You don't believe in
ecologists,
science.
biologists.
You don't believe in science. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Whatever. Tomato.
So you're telling me that what you have is an iconic image of something that really happened and has been proven.
It really happened.
Okay.
It's been proven that it happened. There is physical evidence it happened.
Okay.
But there is still a twist to the story that I think a lot of people don't know. Okay. So I'm mentioning going a little bit more highbrow. So I'm going to be patriotic. Now, Todd, we have talked about patriotic things in the past, right? We talked about 1976 and the bicentennial. We've talked about the poster, the civic posters. We talked about the Hope poster with Shepard Fairey. We've talked about a lot of different stuff here, and including flags, national flags. And so this kind of weaves in to that story in a way. And I bet I can say 2 words. And when I say these 2 words, it's a proper name, actually. And when I say it, I guarantee not only will you have an immediate image pop into your head, but anyone listening to us will have, I think if we were to ask them to draw this image, they would probably be able to do a reasonably good job just from memory. Okay?
All right. Give it to us. Let's do a test here.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
And I'll even go one step further. It's only 7 letters total. So how iconic is that?
Okay, well, I'm trying to figure it out because
hold on. I'm not even done yet. It's also in a foreign language.
Okay, well, that blows what I thought. Because I thought it was the Times Square sailor kissing the nurse.
You are not too far off.
But that's not in a foreign language.
No, but it's the same time period, and it's around about, it's for the same event without a doubt, and it's around the same time period. Are you ready? All right.
Yeah.
Iwo Jima.
Oh, yeah, the flag raising.
Exactly.
The heroic flag raising.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that image it's cool. It's everywhere. It talks about, visually, it talks about struggle, overcoming, it talks hopes and dreams.
Yep. It's kind of like when you assemble a piece of furniture from IKEA.
I'm not sure how that works, but I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about struggles and overcoming adversity and hopes and dreams.
So they had an Allen wrench to get that
they
photo?
Did. They had a shapeless white sort of cartoony guy helping them behind the scenes.
No, I think I've seen like motion picture footage too that I guess was from that same time.
Yes.
And this is this a clip from that motion picture?
Sort of. It was recorded by 2 different people, but they were in about the same place at the same time. Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit. So, as we were just mentioning, this is, without argument, one of the most iconic photos that's ever been taken, certainly in American history, right? Mm-hmm. We see it everywhere, and it just remains an enduring image of American men at war and is probably the most famous photo from World War II. You mentioned the sailor kissing the gal, the nurse in Times Square. That's probably the second most famous photo, I would think, right? Mm-hmm. So where did this photo come from? Like, what's the origin story? So this photo was taken by Joe Rosenthal, who was a photographer with the Associated Press. And he took the photo on February 23rd, 1945, okay? So that was a Friday. Mm-hmm. On that Sunday, so 2 days later, on the 25th, it appeared in newspapers everywhere. I mean, every front page everywhere, any major newspaper. New York Times, Washington Post, I mean, you name the paper, this wire photo was on the front page. I mean, and in fact, it was so impactful. It is the only photo in the history of photojournalism to have won the Pulitzer the same year it was published.
No kidding, really?
I mean,
Wow.
so just zero competition for this. Like everybody just thought this was
big deal.
so iconic. It's an incredibly big deal.
Yeah.
And of course, for anyone who has either on their own or through a school field trip or anything like this, taken a trip to Washington, D.C., and they've gone to Arlington, across the river from Washington, D.C., the National Cemetery. There is the Marine Corps War Memorial right next to the cemetery, and that is a sculpture flying a real flag, a fabric flag, but it is based on this image. They rendered it in 3 dimensions. Okay, so a lot of people know all about this. As I mentioned, you could conjure it from memory with reasonable accuracy. We all probably wish we had $1 every time we've seen this image over the course of our lives. So now here's the part that you don't know, probably. This photo was staged.
What?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I mean...
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now, Bigfoot, as far as I know, was not the one who staged it, though.
No, Bigfoot had nothing to do with this because Bigfoot had not been seen yet. So
that's right.
You can't blame Bigfoot.
Not this time.
Still hiding.
Not this time. I blame Bigfoot, actually, for most of my tax problems, but not for this specific photo being staged, okay? By the way, the IRS, they ain't buying it.
Yeah, they ain't buying the Bigfoot stuff.
Not anymore. Okay, so before we get into talking about this photo being staged, I feel we need to do a quick history lesson on the Battle of Iwo Jima. Like, how did these guys get there? Why were there photographers there? We mentioned there were people filming there. Like, what was this activity all about? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the photo was taken on February 23rd, 1945. A few days earlier, on February the 19th, the U.S. invaded Iwo Jima as part of its island-hopping strategy in the Pacific to defeat Japan. So this is a Japanese island, okay? Iwo Jima was originally not the target, however, but because of the relatively quick fall of the Philippines, the Americans had extra time sort of built into their schedule prior to when they planned to invade Okinawa. So Iwo Jima is in a strategic location. It's halfway between Japan and the Mariana Islands, and this is where the American long-range bombers were based in the Pacific Theater. And Iwo Jima was used by the Japanese as an early warning station, and it would radio warnings back to Japan, back to the mainland, when they would see these bombers. So it was obvious that America, the American soldiers wanted to knock out this early warning system to give them an advantage when they were invading Japan. So the Americans, after capturing the island, weakened the Japanese early warning system, and then they used the island as an emergency landing strip for damaged bombers, right? So if they were going in to invade Japan and getting shrapnel, getting flak, and they could have like this way station. You got to keep in mind, there weren't always aircraft carriers everywhere or anything like that. So any place that they could land these damaged bombers was helpful rather than them dropping into the ocean. So Iwo Jima isn't a very big place. It's a volcanic island, kind of shaped like a trapezoid. And in fact, the Marines on the island described it as, quote, a large gray pork chop, unquote. So that gives an idea. Yeah, I know. It's almost dinner time for us.
Okay. So, and it's pretty strategic, obviously, to Japan main island.
Yes. So here's another little bit of trivia here. So it would be the first Japanese homeland soil. So it was affixed to Japan. Like Japan regarded it as part of the country proper. So this was the first homeland soil to be captured by the Americans. And it was a matter of honor for the Japanese to prevent its capture. So even though it was this little island out in the ocean, it's a great point of pride. So the island is dominated by the highest point, which is called Mount Suribachi. And it's a dormant volcanic cone at the southern tip of the island. So just like, Japan is this volcanic archipelago. Hawaii, of course, is another example of this, the Ring of Fire. So tactically, the top of Suribachi was one of the most important locations on the island, right? That's the high ground.
Yeah.
So from that vantage point...
So you could see everything, yeah.
Yeah. And just you have this tactical advantage. So from that vantage point, as long as there were Japanese soldiers at the top of this mountain on this island, they could spot artillery accurately and drop it onto the Americans, particularly in the landing beaches. So as these guys are coming on the island, these guys are shelling them from this high point, okay? So that was a strategic locale on the island, and it was heavily fortified. And when the Marines initially came in, they suffered incredibly high casualties, as you might imagine. And the Japanese fought most of the battle from these underground bunkers and pillboxes. So even though it was a volcanic island, they were able to burrow into it. And it was very common for Marines to disable a pillbox. They would use a grenade or use flamethrowers. So they're tossing stuff in there. Soldiers would scatter. And then only after that, after they thought everybody was gone, all of a sudden there was this network of tunnels. And so these guys were coming back into the pillbox, and they were replacement soldiers. And they were, again, just taking up the fight again against these Americans. So it was a long struggle, a drawn-out struggle, okay? So the American effort concentrated on isolating and capturing Suribachi first. So that was goal number one. We're going to start here. And it was achieved on February 23rd, okay? So now we're getting back to our date of the flag. 4 days after the battle began. So protracted battle for 4 solid days. And despite capturing that mountain, the battle still continued to rage for many days afterwards. And in fact, the island wouldn't be secure until 31 days later on March the 26th.
Wow, so like a month later. Yeah.
So even though this flag is getting raised, there's still almost a month, really over a month, that this fighting was still going on. So most of us think about it, of course, as a victorious image.
Right.
Job well done, let's raise the flag. So it wasn't that at all, in fact. Okay, so now that we have that context about the battle, let's get back to the flag raising itself, okay?
Okay.
All right. So this, also a little known fact, this wasn't even the first American flag raised on Mount Suribachi. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
Is everything I know a lie?
Not everything. Not everything. You owe me at least 4 drinks at the bar. That's true.
I know, we're racking those up.
We are.
At least Bigfoot is real.
Yeah, he might pick up your bar tab for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Put it on Bigfoot's tab.
All right, so this was the second flag raising. Okay, so let me pause for a second.
Yeah, sure.
What I'm thinking about here is, if they got Mount Suribachi, it was a symbolic victory. They kept fighting for a month later, but if they captured the top of that mountain, it was a way of showing all the troops that we were moving in the right direction and give them hell, boys.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because there's still more people coming onto this island, right? And so at the top of this island is this mountain, and if you're a soldier coming to it and you see an American flag flying, you're gonna be excited. You're gonna think, oh, I'm aiding the cause here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a smaller flag that had been raised earlier in the day at about 10:20 a.m. or so by a different group of Marines. Okay. A fellow named First Lieutenant Harold Schreier was a leader of a 40-man platoon, and he was given the American flag, the first American flag, from the battalion's transport ship, the USS Missoula. And he was told by his commander, a fellow named Lieutenant Colonel Chandler Johnson, quote, "If you get to the top, put it up." So when they got to the top of the mountain, they found a water pipe that was among the debris on the mountaintop. There's all this detritus, as you can imagine, because there's all this shelling and grenades and everything. Everything's getting destroyed. So they found this water pipe in the mountaintop. The flag was attached to it, and then it was raised by 3 men and sort of planted among the debris. So the guys start cheering, right? They're like, the pillboxes have been emptied. We put this flag up. Life's good. We've won. So the sound of them cheering, the American soldiers cheering, alerted the Japanese who were hiding. So they knew that they weren't laying in wait anymore, that they were celebrating. So the Japanese popped back out and started fighting them again, right? So they thought they had the mountain captured and they didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are photographs of this first flag on Mount Suribachi, and they were taken by Staff Sergeant Lewis Lowry of Leatherneck magazine. Okay? And we're going to post that photo on our episode page as well. Hey Todd, speaking of pictures, picture this. You making your way over to the bar to grab the next round.
Well, Elliot, that's fine with me. I'll put it on your tab.
Folks, while we arm wrestle over the bill, take a few minutes and refresh your own drinks as well. We'll see you soon.
Hi, while we have your attention, if you want to learn more about us and the podcast, there are a few ways to do it.
Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com. All of that is spelled out. No numbers.
Kind of a long URL, so do yourself a favor and bookmark it. Once you're there, you can find links to more information about the subjects in this episode, our episode archive, and information about both of us.
Wait, we do want people to visit, right?
Well, and look for us on social media. You can find those links on our website as well.
And while we're at it, if you have a friend who you feel will dig on our rambling,
tell him or her what we're up to.
While we can't guarantee that they will remain your friend, we can guarantee that they will listen to at least 30 seconds of whatever episode you send them the link to.
That's being a little shameless.
And speaking of being shameless, it wouldn't be a proper ask if we didn't mention that if you like what you hear, you can also make a donation via our website. We have a Nigerian prince handling all transactions for us.
In fact, he told us to mention that we have stickers to mail to anyone who donates $10 or more. Are we done?
We're done.
We're done.
Okay, before I get into the second flag raising and what that was all about, I want to throw it back to you, and I want to hear a little bit more about what we have going on with Bigfoot, because you sort of left us with a cliffhanger.
You know, I think what you just did there is probably one of the priceless moments of podcasting, Elliot. Before I finish telling you about a heroic effort in World War II in Iwo Jima, I'd like to hear more about Bigfoot.
I would say we have mixed priorities here.
Yes, we do. But this is a great story nonetheless. So where I left off before, if you remember, Roger Patterson and a guy named Bob Gimlin riding horses came upon a she Bigfoot named Patty, and they captured it on a little bit of footage. One frame from that became iconic, and we know it, and it's sort of been the model for all Bigfoot yard sculptures ever since. So there's a little backstory here that starts to shed some light. Patterson and Gimlin met while working in rodeos together. They both did sort of odd jobs, and Roger Patterson was captivated by Bigfoot once the giant footprints were discovered by the logging company. And he became obsessed with tracking Bigfoot, so much that he wanted to start making a documentary about tracking Bigfoot. So this footage that he captured, he was the one behind the camera, if you remember, who was trying to get off his saddle, grab his camera. The footage that he captured was to be part of this documentary. Of course, you know, he captured other stuff along the way, because that's what you do when you're looking for a creature that you don't know if it exists. You're examining dirt prints and showing yourself horseback riding. Now, okay. Unfortunately, Roger passed away in 1972 due to cancer. And with that, the dreams of tracking Bigfoot and the documentary went away as well. Now, skeptics and supporters, I would say, to be fair, there are skeptics of the Bigfoot image and there are supporters of the Bigfoot image. They both have analyzed it to death. Like, there is so much information about this one particular photo, the authenticity of the photo, and believers fall into the camp of, there's no way this could have been faked with the technology available at the time. Hollywood producers and makeup artists, Stan Winston, those guys, they point to another one of my favorite movies, Planet of the Apes, which was released at the same time, 1967. They point to that as state-of-the-art ape costuming. And Bigfoot is far more believable, with the giant shoulders and kind of long ape arms, and of course the large feet. That doesn't make Planet of the Apes any less of a classic movie, I'll say, but it's pretty obvious there are people wearing ape costumes there.
I know you love Planet of the Apes.
I love Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Okay, that'll be, Todd, for you, I'm willing. We will have to do a future episode where we somehow weave in Planet of the Apes.
We got to, yeah. So maybe movies with the Statue of Liberty. Oh, shit, did I just give that away? Well, okay. It's a 53-year-old, 4-year-old movie. So anyway, these experts said there's no way that this could have been faked. Like these rodeo cowboys, I mean, they don't have the technology to do this. We don't have the technology to do this.
Yeah, how would they know how to do it and nail it the first time out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. The skeptics, however, they fall into the category of maybe anthropologists, and they say, like, well, the hair is a little too uniform. No mammal in the world has mismatched palms and soles of the feet. I didn't know that. All mammals, your feet and the palms of your hands match.
Meaning like the color?
Yeah, the color.
Okay.
And thank you for clearing that up.
Because I was going to say my hands and my feet, if they genuinely matched, we would have all kinds of problems.
Yeah, okay. But
although that does explain my difficulty hitchhiking.
But the colors of the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet generally match in color, as do all mammals, which I didn't know that. But the biggest... so this creature had mismatched palms and soles.
Maybe she just had dirty feet. She was in a creek bed.
Well, her feet were actually a lot lighter in color than the palms of her hands. But this is the biggie. This was the real one for skeptics.
Okay.
The picture of Patty the Bigfoot had no crack. Her butt wasn't separated enough. So that's what cryptozoologists point to as, this isn't real, because that ape doesn't have a crack.
So there wasn't enough junk in Bigfoot's trunk?
There was a lot of junk, but it was not separated into sections. So there you go. Now, I'm leaving it for the listeners to make a judgment call. But I've got a little bit of more information that came out after Mr. Patterson passed away. So remember his partner riding with him, Bob Gimlin. Bob didn't shoot the footage. Patterson shot the footage. Bob was holding a rifle, but told not to shoot the creature unless they were in danger. Like, don't shoot them. We want to capture this thing alive. So for his role, he got majorly harassed and threatened and called a nut job for bringing this story to life.
Yeah, so this is something I wanted to ask. So the guy who shoots the footage does it in service of a documentary. He passes away. The documentary doesn't come out. So how does this footage end up getting released? How is it out in the public space?
Well, the footage was released.
Oh,
and it was
okay.
shown. It was shown to producers. The documentary was never finished.
Oh, so they...
And it was actually... there was some footage shown in theaters and things like that. Short film stuff.
Okay,
but
so they sort of did it as a teaser to gin up interest in the full documentary, perhaps?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because they were working on a documentary and they were looking for funding and blah, 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 and all that stuff.
Got it.
So all of that was Roger Patterson's baby. And Bob Gimlin was just, the buddy along for the ride and the shooting, maybe. So he went really quiet on this after Patterson's death. He became really silent on the whole Bigfoot thing. And he simply just said, I know what I saw. It was real, and it left me awestruck. So Bob Gimlin said, it's not a hoax. I know what I saw. And I saw it. It left me awestruck. It was crazy. All right.
There's the northern lights of Bigfoot sightings, it sounds like. Halley's Comet.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the prize, dude. Okay. So I'm going to start tying this bad boy together here. You remember the logging company back in 1958, the guys that discovered the first footprints?
Yeah, because I'd asked you about this, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So flash forward 2002, the family of one of the deceased loggers by the name of Ray Wallace comes forward and says that Ray Wallace secretly made these footprints with large carved wooden stamps as a hoax, just to play a hoax on his fellow loggers, because obviously the legend was well known by the locals there, but there was no real physical evidence. So this guy, Ray Wallace, created the physical evidence that started that crazy train. And it's been proven by his family, et cetera, et cetera.
They have the molds and everything, the 50, 60-year-old molds?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And,
okay, great.
And they're very, obviously well done. But that just tells us how Patterson and Gimlin got to that location. That doesn't say anything about Bigfoot being on film, right?
Yeah, because they didn't know the logging guys or anything, right?
Well, as it turns out, Roger Patterson, being obsessed with Bigfoot, started asking Ray Wallace a lot of questions about where did you see these? Where was it spotted? Blah, 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 blah. And Ray Wallace, the guy that made the footprints, said, you should go to Bluff Creek. There's a lot of sightings. There's a lot of soundings. You might be lucky up there. If I were you, for your documentary, that's where I would spend my time. So that's where the two guys headed.
So he had an advisory role.
Yeah, he had an advisory role because, again, that's where he had originally put the hoax of the footprints.
Right.
So he was carrying out the hoax a little bit more. So.
Oh, I'm sure he loved that this thing, no pun intended, kind of grew legs and was, even going further than just pranking his coworkers.
Oh, yeah. Now it had rodeo guys
right.
in on it who were spending all their money to try to capture this thing, right? Okay. So that was in 2002, and that told us, where the original footprints come from. Also in 2002, you ever heard of a Charlotte-based costume company called Morris Costumes, Elliot?
No.
Based in Charlotte, right here in Northern Carolina.
Yes.
With us.
Technically Southern North Carolina.
Northern Carolina, yeah. So anyway.
You doing all right?
Yeah, let me say that again. Northern Carolina. So the founder of Morris Costume Company came forward in 2002 saying that he sold a gorilla suit to Roger Patterson in 1967, and Patterson told him on the phone he wanted to use it as a prank. So Morris Costumes was into the magic business and obviously costumes and things like that. So they thought it was like, a magic prank. So they kept it quiet over the years. And they said, the owner said, this is, again, this was like just barely almost 20 years ago. The owner said Patterson called back and asked how to make the shoulders more massive. How do you make the arms longer and the feet bigger? And the costumer said, well, just have them wear football shoulder pads and carry sticks in their hands to extend the arms. Mm-hmm. And it was suggested that Bigfoot maybe wore modified clown shoes as well to create the large bipeds, as it were.
That explains why the soles of his feet were bright yellow.
Yeah, yeah. And they squeaked when he walked.
That's right.
But there's been some discrepancy, that maybe it still didn't look like a manufactured costume. It was really a little bit too good.
Yeah, I mean, they gave it boobs.
Yeah, Patty the Bigfoot had breasts. Yeah, so there was some work done there that no one could really quite point to. Like, this was not the smoking gun until a guy came forward by the name of Bob Hieronymus.
Oh, that's a great name.
Yeah, and he claims to have been the figure depicted in the Patterson film. He had not previously discussed his role in the hoax because he hoped to get paid for the footage, like from this documentary that was going to cause this great windfall of stuff. So Roger Patterson promised to pay Gimlin, Hieronymus, and Ray Wallace. And no one got a penny except for Roger Patterson. So that's why they all started sort of telling their parts of the story.
Okay.
But so he told that because he obviously wasn't going to get paid, and he was afraid he would be convicted of fraud had he confessed.
Oh, wow.
But after speaking to his lawyer, he was told that since he hadn't been paid for his involvement in the hoax, he couldn't be held accountable.
So how many years later was this? When did he? So if
that was like 2000, late 1990s, early 2000s. So all of that reveal that I just mentioned, from the large footprint molds to the costume to the guy wearing it, all came out just in the early 2000s.
That's wild.
Yeah, so for almost 50 years, it had created such a stir that, really convincing skeptics that Bigfoot was alive and it was wearing a giant fur coat and clown shoes.
Well, what's interesting about this is sort of very when you think of a lot of hoaxes, there's always someone who spills the beans generally, because they're having fun with it, like it's too fun. If there were only 3 guys involved, money is on the line, and one guy drops dead. So now it's down to 2 guys, and they really weren't the brains behind the operation.
Right.
And they think there's some sort of payday down the road, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not like they can go to court and sue this first guy. I mean, he's dead. He's gone.
They either think there's some kind of payday, or they think, oh, shit, what have we started here?
Right.
This is going to... and again, remember at the time, Bob Gimlin was harassed. His family was harassed.
That's right, yeah.
Because people were like, you're a nut job and get out of here. Things are different now. Bigfoot's cool. Bigfoot and Sasquatch is cool. Like, as I started by saying, more than 20% of Americans in 2014 believe in Bigfoot. And this is evidence that was a faked photo, right?
Right.
But it's highly debated in the internet of Bigfoot. And we're probably going to get hate mail for it. But I say leave it up to your own vision. Maybe these guys are not telling the complete truth. Maybe there was some footage captured, but certainly there could be a Bigfoot around. It could happen. Why not?
So do you think Bigfoot might have been like sort of the OG when it came to pro wrestlers? He has his character, he has his storyline. You're not sure how much of it's real, how much of it's an act. And he's just largely misunderstood.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Yeah, I would say that I've never seen Bigfoot break a chair over anybody's head, though. So
True.
So he does have honorable intentions. Or in this case, she had honorable intentions. All right. So I've wrapped up.
Speaking of honorable intentions.
Yeah, speaking of honorable intentions, tell me more.
Okay. So as I mentioned, just jumping back in our story a little bit, we had talked about the first original flag that went up the morning of February 23rd, 1945. And then now we are going into early afternoon with our second flag. Okay, so why a second flag? We have this first one up. Well, you really zeroed in on it. The flag, this was very spontaneous. They'd snatched this first flag off the nearest boat, transport boat, whatever, gave it to the soldiers, stormed the hill, put this thing up as a symbol. Well, it worked as a symbol for people sort of already on the island or in close proximity to the mountain. But, as you also discussed, there were other people coming. So, the noteworthy flag, the one that we're very, very aware of, happened in the early afternoon. So the first flag was small. It was way too small. So it wasn't a good symbol. So people, the American forces, word had spread, as we mentioned earlier, guys were cheering. So people were aware of this, lifting the spirits of the soldiers. But something else needed to be done. There needed to be a better symbol. Enter Captain Dave Severance. So, under orders from Lieutenant Colonel Johnson, he sent Marines back to the top of Mount Suribachi to plant a bigger flag. Okay? So this flag came from another ship. This time, a nearby ship called Tank Landing Ship USS LST 779. So that rolls off the tongue really nicely, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 778.
No, this is one better. This is one better. Okay. So the group of Marines made it to the top of the mountain around noon. And believe it or not, after all this sort of entrenched warfare that I mentioned earlier, they were not fired on. They were actually just able to go up the mountain. So, as a result, 3 military photographers, Rosenthal, the fellow who took the photo, followed them. Okay? So on the way up, they met Lowry, who was the first photographer from the image I mentioned earlier that we will have available. He was coming back down. So he actually said to the other guys, the other photographers, hey, you should go up to this mountaintop. The view from there is incredible. It's the highest point on the island, right? And, there's already a little flag up there, so they knew where to go. So the photographers arrived just as the soldiers were attaching the second flag to a different water pipe, okay? So Rosenthal, he actually took off his camera, set his camera down because he was beginning to pile some rocks up so that he could stand on them to get a better vantage point, for this view. So he's kind of, distracted. He's going ahead, piling these rocks up, and he's not holding his camera. And then he looks up, while he was piling up the rocks, these Marines had been attaching this second larger flag to this pipe. He looks up just as they're starting to raise the flag, right? And he's like, oh my goodness, I don't even have my camera. So he thinks he's going to miss the action. He's like, I'm there to capture this moment. So he snatches up his camera, swings it up to his face, kind of is looking through the viewfinder, and snaps this photo, like just totally spontaneously, like takes a series of images as these guys are putting the flag into place. And it's funny because if you look at this still image, you think of it as kind of like a struggle, given the composition, which we'll talk about in a moment. But when you watch the footage, the film footage, it's actually a very fluid motion. And I mean, it is over in a split second. So the fact he was able to catch this perfect moment is so incredible. So where are these flags now? Right? So we know about, you had asked about artifacts, right? So where are these two flags? So both of them were actually kept by the Marines, and they can be found, you think about the famous Star-Spangled Banner that's in the Smithsonian. Well, not too far away at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Triangle, Virginia, just on the outskirts of D.C., you can actually find both the first flag and the second flag. So they're both there. Okay. Even though all of this happened, even though the second photo was staged, there was still a lot of confusion about what was going on because, it was still somewhat of a spontaneous act. This photographer, he was a stringer, he's this Associated Press photographer. So he was on the island, but he didn't know these guys. And so he was following them along, gets this photo, and then there was confusion over who was actually pictured in it, okay? So what was known is that all of the men served in the 5th Marine Division on Iwo Jima. So that much was undisputed. But 3 of the 6 Marines in the photo, Sergeant Michael Strank, Corporal Harlan Block, and Private First Class Franklin Solzy, were later killed in action during the battle. As I talked about, this continued for more than a month after this flag raising, right? Yeah. So sort of like your guy, the brains behind the operation, passing away with a lot still unresolved. Same thing. So these 3 guys were later killed in battle. Okay. So Block, who I mentioned, was actually identified as someone else. He was identified as a man named Sergeant Hank Hansen until January of 47, so after the war is over. Solsley was identified as Hospital Corpsman John Bradley, USN, until June of 2016. So that lasted even longer than this Bigfoot thing, right? This was only 4 or 5 years ago. Then the 3 other Marines in the photo were corporals, then at the time privates first class, Ira Hayes, Harold Schultz, and Harold Keller. So Schultz was identified as Solsley until June of 2016, and until October of 2019, Keller was identified as another soldier, Rene Gagnon, who had helped find the flag on the ship, but actually did not make the trip up the mountain. So he did have a story, he did have a hand in it, but he wasn't actually in the photo itself, okay? So it's really, really interesting to me that we're talking about these 2 very iconic images, indelibly stamped on our culture, as we've talked about. Everybody from memory can probably draw both of these images. But there was also a lot of confusion around them, around the origin story and what was going on, right? So really, really interesting to connect the dots. So going back to this Iwo Jima image, what is it that makes this photo so great? What makes this photo so memorable? I thought a lot about this, and I kind of distilled my thinking down into 3 points. So the first one has to do with the era that the photo was taken. I think the fact that it's black and white is so striking because you really focus on what's happening in the photo rather than the coloration of everything. You know, because it's so monochromatic, it's just really, really beautiful. And in the motion picture footage I mentioned, that actually, believe it or not, was in color. So you can actually contrast the 2 different scenes. And I think that's really, really interesting. The second thing is the poses of the soldiers, right? The flag is being raised. The soldiers are behind one another, sort of starting to push it up. So there is this triangular composition. You know, it's not just a vertical staff with a flag on it with people standing around looking at it, which kind of is what the first image was, the earlier image from that day with the smaller flag. As a result of that, because it's this physical act and it's this sort of triumphant act and it's this act of teamwork, it looks like a classical painting. You know, when you think about a lot of these Renaissance paintings and these military acts or these narrative moments, this definitely feels like one of those. Pretty.
It leads the eye to that action, the tension of the soldiers at the bottom.
Yes, it is just so. Like I said, it's this microsecond, this perfect stolen moment. And then the last thing, and this is something that, as a little kid, loving flags, like we've talked about, I always loved flags. But always bugged me. But now that I love about it, and I think this completely adds to the narrative element, is that the flag is still unfurling and the pole is still being raised. So it is this stolen moment on a windswept bluff. It's about the act. It's, yes, about the flag, but it's really about the whole process, the whole act. And the fact that the flag is still unfolding as the pole is being raised, it is just so, in my opinion, poetic. It is just
definitely iconic.
Yeah, just absolutely perfect. And to the point that it's funny. So the memorial outside of Arlington, the flag that they have attached to it is a real flag. And I believe it's a 50-star flag. It's not a 48-star flag like this flag was. And I think if I'd been in charge, now nobody asked me, but I would have liked to have had a flag sculpted just like the rest of the memorial in that moment. Like, to me, it's not. It's
the sort of semi-unfurled.
Yes,
flag.
It's not the fact that it's an American flag in and of itself, in my opinion, and especially if you've ever been there and you've seen the memorial in real life. When it isn't a windy day, in my opinion, it takes something away because the flag just hangs there limp, right?
Yeah.
But if it were this flag, if truly everything about that photo were frozen in time in the same way in 3 dimensions, I think it actually would have had more drama behind it, and I think it would be just that much more beautiful.
Yeah, see, that's because you see the photo as being about the 6 guys, the struggle of the 6 guys, but clearly whoever designed the sculpture saw it about raising a flag above the 6 guys.
Right.
So that's interesting, and of course very heroic. And I'm trying to think of some corollaries with the Bigfoot image, and the only thing I can say is the Bigfoot image is it captures the body of what we knew of Bigfoot with arms, legs. It creates enough mystery by its sort of glance and placement that it could be real. It creates enough question and that it could be real, or as skeptics would say, it's not. The biggest thing I learned, if you're going to pull a hoax, though, you need an unknowing punk along with you. Like, that's what these other guys were. That's what Gimlin was, basically. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. He wasn't informed of this. So he was the guy that honestly said, I saw Bigfoot.
Right.
And I think if you're going to pull off a hoax, you need that. You need someone that you're not going to tell the whole story to so they can firmly believe it and tell everybody else.
Right. I think that's a great point. Todd, I will say, though, that the Bigfoot footage did in fact raise one thing.
What is that?
Curiosity.
Ah, that's right. Which is something that we love. I'll drink to that, as a matter of fact, Elliot.
All right. Well, in that case, I'll drink to that too, which will be a drink that you will buy for me. How about that?
All right. I'll see you that then. You told a heroic story, so I'm glad to hear that. And we'll see you and everyone else next time around the bar.
Sounds good. Bartender, 2 Sazeracs, please.